Welcome to Crowning, where birth is a portal to our power. My name is Siobhan Doulas, and I'm a full spectrum doula, childbirth educator, and spirit medium, transforming fears of childbirth and helping parents become the leaders that your ancestors have been praying for. It's been a while. The last three shows, well, I planned the first one being off because I was on retreat. Then I was sick. Then I was taken out by allergies, but we're back for episode 5 with a renewed vision, with refreshed excitement and enthusiasm to be here. And let's just get into it for this week. Hey, Heaven. So this week we're going to talk about doulas. There's one particular kind of current event in the doula sphere that has sparked this, and I think in this little mini unexpected hiatus, I've been able to really sit with my specific role. As I just introduced myself, I've been a doula. I'm on year 7 of being a doula. I am on year 8 of being a parent almost, and a lot has changed since I entered this field, not only in my personal life, but also in the field of doulas. I think I entered into doula work with this wave of um, people who were just learning about it because I didn't know what a doula was in 2018 when I became pregnant with my son. And as I've shared before, I was inspired by my own birthing experience, somebody sharing it with somebody who said, "Have you ever heard of a doula or thought of getting one?" And I didn't know what that was. And then as the first year or so of my motherhood journey unfolded, I was talking more with other friends who had given birth and learning just how messed up the birthing industry is. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today because while it was less familiar, at least to me who had a decent grip, I'm pretty connected with pop culture and what things are in the sphere. So obviously doulas already existed, uh, but I never came across it during my entire pregnancy. And so since then, 2019, when I took my first training, um, to now 2026, oh my gosh, it's a trip to even think I've been in this for this long now. So much has changed. Not only do more people know what doulas are, and if you don't know at all, no worries. I'm gonna get into it with you. Yay! Hi, Jam. We not only have kind of grown as a kind of collective in understanding what doulas might be, but also hospitals have grown and evolved in their understanding of what doulas are and what our role is. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get started, I'm going to start with our intention to connect with one another here, connect with our bodies, because sometimes not as intense today, especially the last two episodes were a little heavier in terms of the content, but still I want to keep us in our bodies. I want to keep us in this zone, in this rainbow of readiness to digest the information. And so this is my self assessment. If you are watching, whether you're live or watching back later, take a look at the self assessment and decide if this is a good time for you to engage with this stream because um, this rainbow portrays based on the nervous system where optimal functioning and growth can happen. And so I realize I keep every time I say this on the stream, I'm like, I really got to do like a basic 101 of the nervous system. So making note for that for next week. Um, but this is my little rainbow, inspired and informed by the Window of Tolerance, originally by Dan Siegel, the Rainbow of Tolerance by Daria of Accountability Mapping, who's a somatics practitioner. And this is my, for live streams and group gatherings, little way of just ensuring that you're able to actually receive this information based on where your nervous system is at today. So, if it's your first time here, one, we consider underactivated, that is maybe a delayed response, emotional withdrawal, or shutting down. This is like underactivation of the nervous system. And sometimes that feels like, for me, I would usually describe that as like feeling really depressed. And honestly, I was at a one in the last couple weeks. The US is basically at war. I don't like laugh to say that lightly. It just is. It just is right now. And so um, it's a lot to handle. And especially for those of us that are intuitive, that are, everybody's intuitive, but engaging with our intuitive gifts, engaging with our energetic systems, our somatic bodies. Uh, it's a lot. It's a lot. And February was maybe one of the most intense months I've experienced in recent years, um, mainly for the level of how deeply I felt it in my body, what's going on, how much I've been questioning my role in this and what I can do and how I want to show up and the decisions that I need to make um, to really honor the information that I'm seeing and the systems that I'm seeing crumble. Um, but that's where I was at. So that's why I did not show up and why I canceled the last 2 weeks ago was physically unwell, and that was manifesting very like emotionally as well. Um, but on the other end, on the five end, is kind of things we would maybe more describe as like anxious or scatterbrain or heightened anxiety, tears or rapid speech, and maybe some emotional overwhelm. That does not mean you're not welcome here. You're so welcome here. And maybe you want to do this next practice with us. We're going to do a little short uh, short connection with our creative energy, with our inner birth realm, as I call it. And at the same time, um, it just may better suit you later. So if you're in the 2 to 4, you do not need to be feeling great. You do not even need to be feeling good. But this is where optimal functioning based on neuroscience can occur, where we are more likely to digest information and be open to growth and change. So, wherever you're at on that rainbow, assess for yourself. And oh, you know what I forgot to do today was update the music on here onto this little one. So I don't have music for today's little grounding. Um, But wherever you're at, I invite you to join me, and we'll just do like 5 minutes of being present, presence in this moment. And I'm going to ring this bell to clear out everything that has arrived with us, everything that we've had to do before this moment, following this moment, and just a practice of presence here together today. And so I want you to take 3 breaths with me, starting with an inhale or just a big sigh, exhaling, and an inhale through the nose. Exhaling maybe with audible sounds to get all of that breath out, all the way down to your pelvic floor. Before taking in the freshest breath you've taken yet today. Letting it fill your lungs, let your belly expand. Exhaling again, imagining roots dropping down from the base of your spine into the earth. Connecting with our first mother, Mother Earth. Taking in another big, fresh breath. Inviting all that supportive earth energy into your body, up all the way up to your crown, which is the top of your head here. And exhaling, feeling that not only release back to the earth, but maybe also burst from your crown, giving you relief, a sigh of relief from your body to just arrive here with me now. And so if your eyes are closed, you can keep them closed for a few minutes as these roots continue all the way down, reaching past the soil, maybe the sand. If you're like me, I live in what are sand dunes in San Francisco, California, reaching all the way down beneath the groundwater until these threads, these cords, these roots go all the way to Earth's crystal core, the beautiful red crystallized energy that gives life on Earth. Feeling its warmth on your inhale rise up through your limbs, through your spine, letting it just melt tension in your body, noticing where you're holding tension in your body, breathing into these parts, allowing them to be held. You don't have to release if you're not ready, but just observe neutrally. Just by being present with these parts of us calling for attention, I've been amazed over time at the physical relief that I can often feel. And if it feels good, maybe rubbing your hands together, bringing some heat to your palms, and intuitively placing them somewhere on your body that feels like it needs a little bit of warmth. Maybe it's on your belly, maybe on your low back. And if it feels better to be a little bit in motion, then you could offer yourself some supportive touch. Maybe move your hips, your shoulders and neck. Maybe even offer yourself a little bit of self-massage to just be here, present with your physical being. Today, I'm actually feeling guided to pull a card and inviting you to keep your eyes closed if that feels comfortable. Follow what your body needs right now. Maybe letting my voice vanish and dissolve into the background as you bring your attention to the sound of your breath, noticing the ways you are breathing in and breathing out. And I'm pulling today from Ashley Stinson's Energy Archaeology Oracle deck. There we go. Ooh, receiving, left hand. There's a full moon. There are tall redwood trees in this image. And a look at the left hand. And so maybe notice your left hand. If you didn't place it somewhere yet, you could do that now. I'm just going to read a little bit about the energy according to Ash Stinson. If you can be in this moment who you need to be for a different world, then that world is already here and you can receive it. I'm going to read that again. If you can be in this moment who you need to be for a different world, then that world is already here and you can receive it. Wow. I feel tears welling. I really needed this message today. And so, being in this moment, who we need to be for the world to come, that's kind of what I was mentioning before, is really sitting with what we're observing in the world and choosing who we want to be, how we want to respond. And so, for just a couple more minutes, let's just sit here and be and know that when we can be present and when we can access this sensation, this experience of being who we are, and closing this like mental distance between who I want to be, who I want to become, and instead just trust that you are them, and that if you have the vision, you can be that, and what you can see in you through your imagination, feel through your senses is possible here on earth. The elements associated with this card are earth, water, air, and fire. When we are in balance with this energy of the left hand, we are receptive and gracious. And when we are out of balance, we may feel undeserving or even greedy. So here's a little, let's see. This has quite a few aspects to it, but it feels significant today. So the left hand is made up of 27 bones. There are 3 phalanges in each finger, except the thumb, which has 2. The wrist contains a set of 8 irregularly shaped bones, including the lunate, fire element, and scaphoid, earth element. So the energy in the left hand, and I'm kind of like just moving my left hand, moving my joints. I'm not really, I don't crack my knuckles really, but kind of putting some pressure on them. If it feels better to be in motion and to kind of engage it versus stillness, and moving my left wrist. Because according to Ashley Stinson, the energy in the left hand is designed to flow and flow fast. It is a receptacle and vehicle for how you're designed to receive from this world in ways that are both seen and unseen, physical and energetic. The left hand invites you to magnetize and receive pure potential energy from the world around you. When you're open to receiving what is aligned to you, your ability to co-create expands. This is not about receiving so that you can create. It's about receiving because you're worthy, you have pride in who you are, you trust your power, and you can do so with love and pleasure. Energetic misalignments happen in these bones when you don't trust yourself to receive what is truly for you. The wisdom of the left hand. You receive what you're ready for when you're ready for it. You are a powerful creator who can magnetize absolutely anything to you. But when you call in resources, relationships, and ways of being that you haven't yet embodied, they slip through your fingers. What do you want in your life or in the world that isn't already here? Find those seeds within you and nurture them until they grow from your very foundation. If you want love, nurture love from your core. If you want more abundance, appreciate and embody the abundance you already have. Your ability to receive is only as deep as your ability to embody what you want. Can you be the person in this moment that feels worthy of a different world? Can you be proud of who you are in this moment? Can you be proud in your power as a creator? Loving and loved, able to find pleasure in or despite the world you currently exist in? If you can do that, what you desire is yours and will move into your fingers. It will change the pulse of your life and move into co-creation with you. It will come into your life because it's already a part of your life. And if you can be in this moment who you need to be for a different world, then that world is already here and you can receive it with joy. Love that. The questions posed here for y'all, and maybe if you're watching back, feel free to pause and journal on it. And I'll throw these in the follow-up in the notes. How do I feel about receiving money, love, compliments, food, help? Add anything that comes to you related to that. What do I consistently call in or try to manifest that I haven't received? What feels impossible to believe is coming to me? And the last question is, am I willing to do what it takes to hold a new energy and feeling as true before it shows up in my external world? And how? Well, that was perfect. I didn't plan on pulling a card today, but once we started breathing, that was the where the energy took us. And I see exactly why, especially if you're here to watch as a doula. That's the topic for today. If you're here as a mother, as a parent, present or future parent, this, and I'll show this in case you had your eyes closed. Um, this moon coming through these trees and the hand receiving. That card kind of describes how I feel about manifestation and the way that I personally believe and have learned manifestation to work, which is, and I haven't quite studied what, like, I don't know what people say about manifestation, but I know for me, it's about this belief, and what has worked for me is this process or practice of accessing a feeling. So if I want more money, what is it? What is a feeling that I want to have when I have more money? Is it safety? Is it security? Abundance, which I think is just like a baseline. I don't think abundance is a thing that we like gain. I think it's like a frequency that we choose to be on. And I actually talked a lot about that on Soft Power Hour on Monday night with Midori. And that feeling, we are able to access here and in that moment with our presence, with our focus. My hypnosis teacher, Desiree, calls hypnosis a state of focused autonomy. And that's what my birth realm framework kind of centers on is how do I support clearing a space for you to be present and autonomous and with your energy so that you can choose and consent what you want to experience, consent to what you want to experience. And it's not a state we always can be in. Back to that rainbow of readiness, like life is going to take us for a ride. And it's a good thing to be um, not quite reactive, but responsive, and in some ways reacting to what's going on because it shows that you're still engaged. And that's part of being human and being an emotional being. Um, But when I think about this card and this question of receiving what we think we're like asking for, I think this is really relevant to the intention of um, today, just like exploring. Well, what we're going to get into today is this. I titled the email "The Confusing Controversy Between Doulas and Hospitals," um, because this is the state where you are in your power. This is the state where you can name and identify and claim what it is that you want to experience. And that state of being is unfortunately in direct opposition to the system that here in the US we exist within and globally. I don't know, I can't speak to the percentage of who's influenced by global capitalism, but it's most people, I would say, many people. Um, but I'll speak here to being in the US, that what we're going to talk about today speaks directly to the power of presence and co regulation and receiving and being seen by another person. And then kind of contrasted with the very clear ways that these systems, especially the birthing, what we're talking about is the birth culture and the birthing industrial complex, if you will, just the ways that those don't want that to happen. And that's why I call it confusing, because well, they call it healthcare, and there's nothing caring about that when there is a direct attempt to distance us from this place of being in connection with what it is we deeply desire, being in connection with our inner worlds, dreams, desires, visions, all of that. So just stealing in this energy here in this moment for us of bottling, I think, this feeling in our bodies of what it feels like to be abundant, what it feels like to be sovereign. And if we can access this here and now, even if it's not something you feel in your walking life day to day, if it's something you still have to consciously place yourself back into, that's okay. We were not raised to naturally move through the world feeling abundant and powerful and autonomous. Literally, at pretty much every level, there is a design system to distance us from that and to doubt our ability to access that, our ability to sustain that. And this practice of returning to ourselves and our power is a divestment from an energy that feeds off of our insecurity. I think there's been, we talked about things like the Epstein emails in the last couple episodes. I forget which one, number 3 or 4, we kind of got into it. And without going down a hole, I don't want to go and let that energy into this space, because not just the the whole thing of what they're doing, that is one conversation. And I'm kind of just going to speak right now to the way that they're rolling it out and the theatrics of how they're rolling it out and what that is doing in an attention economy, in an um, energy grabbing economy. So I think that's where I just always want to bring us back to is like the evidence is everywhere that the overculture and systemic like powers know the value of your presence. They know the value of your creative energy, of your imagination, of your voice, of you being in connection with your desires. And so, anytime you could take even just a few minutes to reclaim that, you are rebalancing a power grab and a power siphoning um, that has been in existence, and that is right now I see it flailing to survive. And so things can and will be get more and more ridiculous to grab your attention, to grab your outrage, to grab your passion, because it is so generative, it is so powerful. So reclaiming our time, as is that Max, who said that? Maxine Walters, is that her name? Um, I may have totally made that name up. Let me know if that was not her name. She's a politician, but I think she's the one famous for saying, like, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time. So, you today say, to wrap this up, I'm going to ring the bell, but we are reclaiming our energy, reclaiming our power, reclaiming our sovereignty. Okay? So, we're gonna move on to the next portion of our show here today. Um, I'm attempting to stay closer to an hour. The 90 minutes have been good, but I'm gonna see. I'm seeing what I can do here. So, um, things we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna show y'all right now. We're gonna now get into the conversation of doulas for the week. And this is what sparked and inspired this week's topic. Is this thing making its rounds? I don't know the origin necessarily of who first posted this. I first saw this posted by Badass Mother Birther, Flora de la Cruz. That is a pretty well known in the doula world, birth advocate and doula, an educator. This is from a hospital in Georgia. And also, let's take some water. This was posted at a hospital in Georgia, and this inspired our topic of doulas this week. So it says, attention, all OB patients. Those are obstetrics. If you don't know what OB is, OBGYN, obstetrics, that field of birthing. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we are currently unable to accommodate doula-supported labor within our current practice model. This decision was made to ensure consistency in communication, adherence to medical protocols, and the highest standard of maternal and fetal safety. Patients who wish to pursue doula-supported birth are encouraged to explore other practices or birthing environments better aligned with that model of care. We remain fully committed to offering compassionate, high-quality obstetric care within the parameters of our practice guidelines. Thank you. SJC. I think this is St. Joseph's Candler Hospital in Georgia. Okay, so obviously my biases here. It's a WTF. Yet not surprising. They're saying the quiet part out loud here. And so we're gonna come back to this exact statement and kind of break down what necessarily is so fucked up about this. But the thing that I'm going to stick to is that these are the claims, their reasons for this are, as they say, to ensure consistency in communication, adherence to medical protocols, and the highest standard of maternal and fetal safety. That last piece, highest standard of maternal and fetal safety, is false because it's not evidence based. And that's why the next thing we're going to take a look at today is the evidence of doulas. Provided to us by Evidence-Based Birth. We're going to look at their brief that they've provided for many years. The document I have has been updated, I think it was updated last year, but all of the main points are still consistent. There just may have been more studies done. But basically, the highest standard of maternal and fetal safety in order to ensure, I'll put it this way. Doulas are an evidence-based field. I don't know how to even word this right now. It is evidence-based to use doulas if your intention is to have the highest standard of maternal and fetal safety. So let's just get into why. Let's see here. I'm going to change screens now. Let's take a look here at the evidence on doulas. Here we go. So I did my own highlighting because this is quite long. If you are pregnant or planning a pregnancy, absolutely check out evidencebasedbirth.com. They have many, as they call here, signature articles, and they also have a podcast and just tons and tons of information. They are my go-to for anything looking at evidence. And with that, evidence, they do stick to studies because it's very highly focused on evidence. And that's kind of what we talked about in episode 1, which is that there is evidence that of racism in the birth world and healthcare. All of these things are evidence-based. So these claims, that's the point I want to drive home with this stream, with this show. Something that is really important for me to say is that in a world where people are dismissed as social justice warriors for naming these systems in the name of focusing on facts and logic and science, racism is reflected and the harms of racism are reflected with facts and logic and science. And these are not separate concepts, these are evidence based claims. So let's get into it. We're just going to walk through. There's a lot of really great information here, and so if you are considering hiring a doula, they also have on their website, associated with this page, evidence on doulas. They even have a list of questions to ask doulas, because all doulas are not the same, as we talked about a few episodes ago as well. And that is kind of the first thing to name here, which is what makes this statement from St. Joseph's Hospital in Georgia pretty egregious. And I wonder how this is going over with the camp of doulas who don't see themselves as advocates, who are explicitly not reproductive justice oriented care providers, who see themselves as a supplementary service to mothers that are apolitical. And I think this is making splashes in the doula world because it is there's ways that people who believe they're apolitical are aligning with hospital systems right now, medical doulas and trainings that want to absorb doulas into the system. But this is kind of making it adversarial in some ways that I'm curious how this is going down. So, what is a doula? According to Dr. Christine Morton, a birth doula is a companion who supports a birthing person during labor and birth. They're trained to provide continuous one-on-one care, as well as information, physical support, and emotional support to birthing persons and their partners. And again, the lens that I'm reading this whole thing from is like this contrasted with the hostility of hospitals toward doulas. And if Jem is still here, I don't know, did we talk about this? Or maybe it's someone else talking about the doula policies that here in the Bay Area places are putting in. I've had to sign off at hospitals to say, like, I will not speak on behalf of my client. I will not speak directly to the provider, make decisions. And they are kind of just like one or two notches down from that St. Joseph statement, not saying we can't have you at all, but they basically want you to sign off, like essentially saying, please don't do your job, which is to be a support, which is to be a witness and an advocate for a sovereign birth. So, what do doulas do? We nurture and support the birthing person throughout labor and birth. The essential role is to provide continuous labor to support the mother, no matter what decisions that the mother makes or how she gives birth. Obviously, expanding the gender there, and pronouns. Labor support is defined as a therapeutic presence of another person in which human to human interaction with caring behaviors is practiced. So here they list all these different examples. So examples of physical support, soothing touch, continuous presence, encouragement. These are all really like positive and sweet things. And again, this is an evidence-based website. So they're showing the evidence of having presence and reassurance and encouragement and how that actually impacts birth outcomes. So advocacy can take many forms, most of which do not include speaking on behalf of the client. Some examples of advocacy that doulas have described include encouraging the birthing person or their partner to ask questions and verbalize their preferences, asking the birthing person what they want, supporting the birthing person's decision, amplifying the mother's voice if she is being dismissed, ignored, or not heard, such as saying, excuse me, she's trying to tell you something. I wasn't sure if you heard her or not. Now, keep in mind that, again, there is a whole population of doulas who will explicitly say, we are not advocates. They reject this notion of being an advocate. And so I just wonder, what are you doing in the hospital then as a support person, if not advocating for simple things like this? Excuse me, she's trying to tell you something. I wasn't sure if you heard her or not. Or this phrase down here, Dr. So and so has scissors in his hand. Do you have any questions about what he's wanting to do with the scissors? That really is what a doula kind of does, is just be a presence there to just kind of mirror and and ensure that you know what you're agreeing to. Um, but again, these hospitals keep wanting to make it really difficult for, if a hospital doesn't want this, then what the hell are their interests? Because these should be basic things when it comes to somebody accessing healthcare. Birth of the Divine is an amazing doula in the Bay Area. Um, Thanks for saying this. So you've had to sign off on that in the hospital. And another instance last November, I overheard nurses talking about my doula partner at the front desk for everyone to hear. Yeah, this, like, it's so, that's why I keep saying, like, the word is confusing, because if your goal allegedly is to provide health care, to provide a positive experience, to, as this says, ensure a high standard of maternal and fetal safety, why are you trying to eliminate the people who are evidence based to actually support that outcome? Obviously, I know why, because if they were doing their jobs well, and this is not a knock on nurses, this is, again, we've talked in the past about how this is just about their role. Their role is to manage an experience, to respond to a medicalized event, which birth is not inherently a medicalized event. It becomes that often. It has potential to become that, but the hospital systems, as we saw in episode 1, inspired by a white male desire and capitalist need to create more situations for a hospital to profit from. Again, this is a for-profit system. That is why, as a whole, as a society, we believe births to be a medical event. That is why births are legislated to be required in hospitals in many places. In most places up until the 90s, there's that period where home birth was banned. And it was not to improve the care, it was to exclude midwives, and specifically Black midwives, from accessing and supporting people. Like I said before, like when they first moved births into the hospital, it was the only time in history that white women were dying at higher rates than Black women, because it became a elite thing to be able to birth in a hospital. However, they didn't really fully know how to do that, and they weren't washing their hands, so people were getting infections. Let's see. Back to this. So what don't doulas do? We don't perform clinical tasks such as vaginal exams or fetal heart monitoring. We don't give medical advice or diagnose. We don't make decisions or pressure them into certain choices because it's what they prefer. We don't take over the role of a partner. We don't catch the baby, and we do not. Oh, it says they don't change shifts. That's an interesting one. We sometimes do after 12 to 24 hours. As Jem, I'm laughing thinking about last summer when Jem, Birth of the Divine, and I were collabed on there, and that trade off. That's I'm laughing at that of changing shifts, because Jem, were you going on 24 hours there? Practically not quite 24 hours, but you were there for a very long time. We were like, do we switch? Do we switch? Okay, so let's just get to the research. The researchers found that overall, people who have continuous support during a childbirth experience have a 25% decrease in the risk of a cesarean, and the largest effect seen with a doula, a 39% decrease. So this is speaking to the evidence of continuous support in general. I believe they count that as just somebody, yeah, it says someone who was not a staff member at the hospital and who was not a part of their social network is what has given the best outcomes. But actually, I don't know about this part who's not in their social network because I believe the study is saying that 25% decrease is what happens when you have anybody there with you. This might be even your mom or your friend or anybody who has experienced birth before is also highly likely to decrease your chances of undesired outcomes. And so, um, that's what we're looking at here. It's the difference between any support person versus a trained doula. So 25% decrease of cesarean with continuous support and a 39% decrease with a doula is pretty major. 8% increase in the likelihood of spontaneous vaginal birth with a 15% increase with a doula. A 10% decrease in the use of medications for pain relief um, with the type of person not making a difference between a doula and a support person. So that's pretty interesting. Um, Shorter labors by 41 minutes on average, 38% decrease in the baby's risk of a low 5-minute APGAR score, which is like the first traits they look for when the baby comes out to make sure that they're well um, or not in an emergency response state. So 38% decrease in that, and a 31% decrease in the risk of being dissatisfied with their birth experience. Mothers' risk of being dissatisfied was reduced with continuous support provided by a doula or someone in their social network, but not hospital staff. Hmm. So to me, that's pretty loud and clear. Having somebody there who, and this goes back to the nervous system because one of the simplest ways to co-regulate as relational beings, aka humans, is just another person. And so to me, it also relates to like this power of co-regulation. But even taking that deeper, that's what this kind of like the first number looks at. And then the ones where it shows a doula is like, then that's the power of somebody who is informed, who you trust, who um, you know confidently has your interests at heart. This also includes ways of like just reading statistics. And here we have why are doulas so effective. There's many, many reasons. I really encourage you, like I said, um, to check out the specifics of this when it's your time to plan for birth or consider. I mean, if you're not anywhere near pregnancy, these are the type of things I like to share with people so that they can really consider if a hospital is the place for you to birth and give yourself space to maybe notice what is coming up for you when it comes to the question of where you might birth one day. Does this evidence many people feel more fear about the concept of a home birth? Yet, as we kind of continue down here, I want to get to this part, which is the impact for birthing people of color. So there may be people who are safer in a hospital, and of course, there's always a possibility due to legal things, due to again the sometimes it is a medical, sometimes it does require medicalized or medical treatment or response. But when you look at the statistics, there's quite a few things to weigh out here. And so when people feel nervous about the idea of having a home birth, typically it's because they haven't read the evidence yet. And if you are a person who does not present as a cis woman, thin, able-bodied, and white, then these are the things you need to be reading if the safety of your baby is number one. Because that was the first thing I heard when I was pregnant was what I was entertaining at home birth, and immediately my family was like, but you have a baby to think about. It's not just what your hippie dreams are, Siobhan. It is what about, think about the baby, put the baby first. And if I had seen this evidence, I would be like, well, the evidence is actually safer. And as somebody whose baby ended up in the NICU, as someone whose sister heard the nurse in the hallway talking shit about me, the white nurse, um, yeah, I might have been. And now I'm in this awkward place where because I had Pitocin followed by epidural, followed by intervention after intervention, um, people now say, well, aren't you glad that you were at the hospital? Aren't you glad that you were there to get that care because it went wrong? And that really has informed my doula journey. It's like, actually, no, because now I have the evidence to say there's a high likelihood that it went wrong because of the over medicalization of my birth. So, anyways, in public health, racism influences social determinants, which include housing, education, and employment. The researchers analyzed women's responses around 5 main themes. First, they found doulas play an important role in agency. Agency defined as the capacity of individuals to act or make their own choices. Doulas help their clients to understand their options and facilitated communications with care providers so that clients felt a sense of empowerment or ownership over their care. They also contributed to feelings of personal security. There was a consensus in the interviews that a doula's presence facilitated greater respect and autonomy in decision making. They also played a critical role in transferring knowledge about the pregnancy and birth process. They can connect clients with resources, translate information, which is what I try to do on this show, and yeah, translate the information received from care providers. That is like one of the main things I've done as a doula. I never tell somebody what I would do, or I even try to not explain with my own words what it is. Um, well, I do explain with my own words. I translate the information saying, like, this is what that means, this is what that typically looks like, and then gauging how the person is responding and feeling about that and seeing, do they need to, is this a type of client? This is why continuous care helps because you know, okay, this type of client, she needs to see the information herself, oftentimes. This other type of client, she should not be reading all the information herself because it overwhelms and they can spiral and it can be very overwhelming to some people to have too much information. And so, yeah, finally, doulas helped with the connectedness so that they would not feel socially isolated. Many participants described stressful life situations and desired a doula with similar life experiences, someone who shares their culture and background. And it just, to me, why I think it's so powerful to look at the evidence of doulas is because it really, I think of things like the power of representation in media when people often say representation matters. Look at that. Are when people don't feel isolated and can see and be connected to somebody who shares their culture and background, it has a physiological impact to literally improve the outcome of a otherwise intense life event. This to me shows the like scientific evidence of being seen, of being among peers, of not being culturally isolated. And so I just think it's powerful stuff. So what's the bottom line? Of all the ways birth outcomes could be improved, continuous labor support seems like one of the most important and basic needs for birthing people. Providing labor support to birthing people is both risk-free and highly effective. Evidence shows that continuous support can decrease risk of cesarean, the use of medications for pain relief, and the risk of a low 5-minute APGAR score. Labor support also increases satisfaction and the chance of a spontaneous vaginal birth. It may also shorten labor and decrease use of Pitocin, which is that synthetic oxytocin replacement that encourages contractions. And although continuous support can also be offered by birth partners, midwives, doulas, or even physicians, research has shown that with some outcomes, they have a stronger effect than other types of support people. As such, doulas should be viewed by both parents and providers as a valuable, evidence based member of the birth care team. Yep. So, if that's the case, if all the evidence here, and again, this is a super long article with hella citations, all of it shows that the conclusion there was that birth doulas are an evidence based support person. Now, let's bring it back to this. What are we, though? A threat to hospital policy. A decrease in Pitocin, a decrease in cesarean, a decrease in interventions. What does that mean? A decrease for the hospital's bottom line. If they're not intervening, they're not billing. Now let's look at how the hospital responded when this made waves and got attention. I looked it up and found their Facebook post. And they said, "We do allow doulas during childbirth. A sign posted in error at an OBGYN office earlier this week has been making rounds online." Let me make that bigger for you. It is neither the policy of the Women's Hospital at Candler Hospital nor the practices to exclude doulas during childbirth. We encourage pregnant women to actively partner with their OBGYN to discuss their needs, options, and desires for childbirth. We want every woman to have a great delivery experience. The decision to have a doula in the room during birth is an understanding between the individual patient and their OBGYN. This is why we encourage women to have conversations early in their pregnancy so both the patient and physician can agree about the plan. Thanks for joining, Evan. So again, here I love reading the comments. I'm such a comment section gremlin. Because how exactly does something like that get typed up and posted by accident? How is that an error? Sounds like they weren't expecting the outrage. And this is the one that I think is big. Rachel says, "I've been to several births at Candler last year. Many of your providers have made it a point to tell me and my clients how pointless they find doulas, making my clients uncomfortable. At this point, it just seems like you're backtracking. And I've had 2 clients turned away in February because they stated they had a doula. So this wasn't an error. It was something stated and you weren't prepared for the consequences." Yeah, you have providers within your network who are choosing not to accommodate doula supported births, and that significantly limits options for mothers and birthing people who both want a doula and to deliver at your hospital. So basically, everybody thinks this is bullshit. Backtracking much? Uh, it is that's the rant on that. And I wanted to counter that with all the evidence for all the hospitals out there who will not be watching this stream. But for you to advocate for yourself and to um think about that when it comes to where you birth, because this to me is like the canary in the coal mine of what the future of birthing in this country looks like during late stage capitalism. Now that doulas have gone from mostly being understood as this sweet support person who's just here to help mama and give her tea and blankets and massage, to somebody who is witnessing what you're doing in the hospital, somebody who's taking notes. That's what I do every birth. I have a little on my notes app, taking notes of every visit from the nursing team, somebody who's just observing. We're not here to observe to catch you. We're here to be a witness to our client's birth. And if that's a threat to your care approach, then what the hell is caring about your approach? Because why are you seeing this as a threat? Again,
profit. Again, legal. And that's why we've talked a lot on here about the difference between your rights and a hospital policy. Let me bring it back to my notes here as I failed to be under an hour, but you know what? Whatever. Um, this really speaks to where we're headed as a collective when it comes to birth care. And this hostility could have, I can laugh at the like Facebook comments. I did just laugh at the Facebook comments. And now I'm thinking, well, what did that actually look like for people birthing? That is highly stressful. I can't imagine two people being turned away. That's too much. People to be turned away for showing up with a doula, which is your right. And so where I kind of want to like what I plan to say on this when it comes to like myself as a doula is I'm really thinking about what the future of the doula field and calling myself a doula is going to look like if this is what's going to be happening when um, I'm going to just leave this up here. If this is what's going to be happening when people bring in doulas, I'm wondering, do we need to reconsider even going by doula out there? From the beginning, since I joined and I learned the origin of the word doula, which most people will say that doula is a Greek word for slave or servant, which is why, understandably so, many Black birth workers do not use that term. And at the same time, it is a little bit exhausting to explain to people what we do and to reinvent the wheel when more people are gaining an understanding of the word and it's becoming more popularized as a field. There are more people wanting to become doulas because they want to support mothers, is what most people's intentions are, including myself when I entered into the work. However, I recognized early on, personally, and within the first 2 years of attending births, that this role is limited. That despite all of that evidence for our ability to improve birth outcomes, there's also no guarantee. And what it also takes is for people birthing to trust themselves. And I'm wondering for myself, as I think about attending births, if I want to instead say that I'm just a friend. And what does that do? And I think this is where, not only in the birth work field, but in many fields, many of us are feeling the pressures of rising fascism because many of us are being forced to assess our own safety and our own protection, and strategize how we can show up for the role that we've been called to while still protecting ourselves and our patients. Is it risky now for me, as somebody who talks a lot about reproductive justice and advocating for improved birth outcomes and learning your rights and practicing scripts for how to potentially push back on your medical provider? What does that do for my clients if I show up with that energy at a hospital? Um, if they see that they have a doula and they have biases and prejudices against us and fill in their entire assumptions of what that might mean about the patient, is that putting them at risk? Especially if these are people of color, especially if these are Black or Indigenous people. So there's so many questions right now when it comes to the doula field, and where I'm at personally in my like place in my, I guess, I don't like calling it a career because it's not really, I don't know. It's not, I even say the doula field and it's not even really a field. It's not even really a agreed upon industry. There's so many variations. It's unregulated in the sense that we are not licensed professionals. We don't have a licensing board or oversight from a board. Um, and so we are in this liminal space where I can be paid by insurance. I can be in a provider network where I have an NPI number and insurance can reimburse people for me. Um, and that's all great. And then some of them are asking for my certification. Well, also anybody can start a certification program. Anyone could. I could start one tomorrow. I thought about it. I'm not going to. But when it comes to that, there is kind of this Wild West energy that's been in the field for the last, like, I've only been in here for 7 years. But truly in the last like 3 to 5 years, I've seen the ways that now hospitals are responding, hospitals are getting more diligent with preventing these outcomes that if you read through the evidence-based article, are quite positive. Um, I want to throw Birth of the Divine up here. I prefer to be there most of the time, so much can happen during and feel more secure knowing what's happening. Yeah. This is around the time of being at the birth and shifts. Yeah. It's a tough one. It's really tough. When it comes to being a doula, if you're unfamiliar with our field or have not known a doula, you should know that we don't have employment opportunities for the most part. And the employment opportunities that do exist are often um, underpaid, sometimes exploitative, and a lot of times preys on this good goodwill thing. It kind of is like, well, you shouldn't be profiting or making a lot of money or charging a lot when it comes to this because mothers just need support. And a lot of doulas are mothers, myself included. And what do we need? We need to survive. There was a time where, in general, I would not have been able to become a doula if I did not have the at the time support of my spouse who had healthcare. I wouldn't have been able to leave my healthcare job to go full time in my business, which was 5 years ago. Um, if I did not have yeah, there's so many ways where there are barriers, and it's really I'm thinking out loud right now about what that means for the future of showing up in this field, how I want to relate to this field, and even how I want to name myself. It is really discouraging for doulas who are amazing at what they do to think about what does healthcare look like, what does housing look like, what does even scheduling for me, once I became a single parent, I had to stop attending births for a while because the scheduling and the on call factors were just unsustainable. And on top of that, we are on call 24 hours a day from often 36 or 37 weeks to 42 weeks. That is 6 weeks of us saying that we will be available to show up for you within 3 hours of a phone call, as well as lining up at least one or multiple people to also be able to say yes, just in case we get sick, we get injured, we something happens. Um, and for the average price is here in the Bay Area to be like $2,000 for that. How much is my 24/7 attention and presence valued at? Because we can survive if it's about 2,000 a birth, maybe on taking um, think just do the math for yourself. Here in the Bay Area at those rates, I would have to take at least 3 births a month to survive, and then what happens when I need a rest and when I can't be on call? What happens when I need to pay the backups because multiple people went into labor at the same time? And so I share this all not to complain about this field, but to really shed light on the realities of this. And then to have hospitals be hostile to us. Um, Shout out to doulas, shout out to birth workers, because you don't do it for the money. You don't do it even to support moms, because that's why most doulas, the statistic is um, burnout, exit the field within 2 to 3 years. And by year three, I took almost a whole year off um, because it was just not sustainable in the model that it is. And so my like psychic self, my oracle self, I don't see this field existing in the way that it does much further into the future. I don't want it to. I don't want there to be a profession that relies on the fuckery of hospitals for us to then have to explain to people what we do, teach people why our field even exists while showing up for the work, while like even managing a business, marketing a business, all of that. I don't want it. I'm dreaming of what it looks like for people to work in teams, for people to not have to be on call for 6, 7 week time frames, or months and month longs of time frames. Um, what I dream of and why I started crowning is for a culture that better understands birth, for and family members to understand how to show up and support people, because that evidence showed us that they don't have to be professionals. There's still a massive impact of anybody's presence. And I'm curious how those statistics, that gap between, I think it was what, the 25 versus 38% of decreased cesareans for continuous care versus a doula. I wonder how that gap would close if, as a culture, we better understood birth, and not even just better understood birth, but better understood how to care for one another, better understood the nervous system and what it means and looks and feels like to be seen, to be present. These are the type of things that can bring us and bring people giving birth the ability to go inward and do what they're supposed to be doing, which is connecting with their body and their baby and bringing that baby earthside. I really wonder what the impact would be if more people were not afraid to use our voices and speak up to authority, which is what doctors and nurses are in a hospital system. They are authorities, and we've been trained from birth, especially as people raised as girls and women, to never challenge authority. For authorities to have the power to, like this says, turn people away when it comes to, you don't like my decision. Well, this doula right here, Rachel, says 2 clients were turned away because they stated they had a doula. Providers are making it a point to tell people how pointless they find doulas. And so we got a long ways to go. We got a long way to go. It really should not be this way. Yeah. So my dream, my vision is a world, a culture, a community or village where more of us understand how to show up for one another, how to be co regulators, for us to speak up for ourselves, how to not make decisions for each other, but to be that witness to say, hey, did you hear what she said? Or did you understand that, to your friend or your family member who's giving birth? I really, really dream of more people feeling comfortable stepping into that space. And maybe it is moving away from, if it gets more hostile, I wonder what next word will emerge for the title of these people. Because I don't necessarily want doulas to go extinct, but I do want the reasons why we exist in the advocacy role and have this big of an impact I want that to be extinct because it should not take an additional professional you have to hire on your own to decrease by 38% your chance of cesarean. That's wild. We have to be aware of so much. Thank you. Birth of the Divine says doulas have to be aware of our clients, the environment, ourselves, and our capacity. It is so many things. And also, that's why I think neurodivergent people make excellent doulas because there's a hypervigilance in there, um, and there's a lot happening. And so bring us full circle today. That's why I bring it back to presence. I bring it back to the power of our presence and the power of our focused autonomy. Because if I can learn, and if my clients and peers can learn how to be present in the moment, be present with the energy, and this is also why it's related to my mystical approach to being a witch. I think being a witch and witchcraft is about understanding all the elements at play and knowing how to engage them and to participate and be in co creation with what is present to shape and influence a desired outcome. Kind of been leaning back toward a few years ago, I was playing with the term birth witch, and I'm kind of feeling it again because to me, it's that. It's like, what are all of these ingredients? And so it's also related to like cooking, and maybe that's why I love doing cooking for postpartum as well. I love cooking in general. I'm a Neopet soup fairy in real life, so that's my incarnation, if you didn't know. But it's all the same. It's to me, they're different, like I don't know, different examples of the same thing, which is being present, noticing what is here, noticing what's available, and having the discernment and courage to reach for it, to check in with the other people present, to create and co create an outcome that benefits everybody, but mostly benefits, in this case, the person giving birth. So that closes my little speech on that. There's one last thing I wanted to share because it's tomorrow. If you are in the Bay Area, shout out to our listener, viewer, community member Maddie, who sent this to me. This is the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center, and tomorrow they're having a disabled parenting panel. This is virtual. I would love to encourage folks who brought up the questions of that I've had quite a few people personally in client sessions, and I think this came up a few weeks ago around what if my child is disabled and fears around that. And we got into a lot of considerations in that, which I won't send you searching, but my conclusion is that if you're not prepared for the possibility for a disabled child, then you are not prepared to become a parent because one, it could always happen. Two, most of us will become disabled at one point in our life. And so this, I'm imagining, will speak to more, yeah, more. Let's just read it. Oh, this is, let's see, disabled. And this is also, yeah, and this is, thank you. My brain's kind of jumping around now. But it's also about reproductive justice in that, in shedding the belief that disabled people should not have children. And that's another form of ableism that we haven't quite gotten into in here. But it's actually something that I am continuously untangling for myself on my hard days as a neurodivergent single mother. One of the biggest blocks for me in creating and continuing on having my own business is this internalized ableism that I carry around if I will be able to show up as a parent, and if my disabilities will topple me from everything that I want to create on top of my role and my responsibility as a mother. To be really transparent, I said February was a dark month, and that is kind of where I was sitting, was with the reality that of what's required of me as a mother in this era, as a single mother, um, in these times, as somebody who is responsible for providing for myself and a child, um, pretty much with a sole income household. And well, it is a sole income household, not pretty much, but there's considerations I have to make, and I think as somebody who is highly optimistic, highly inspired, and creative, um, that's been a cycle. If you've been connected with me for a few years now, you probably have noticed it, that I get really excited and I'll launch something or say I'm going to do something, and then I get sick, or I something happens that I have to change course, and it takes so much shedding of shame, it takes so much self-forgiveness, it takes so much untangling again this internalized ableism to keep showing up and keep trying again, and to keep believing that what I have to offer matters and is important. And on the flip side of that, I'm past the point of even being able to consider full-time employment. In the beginning, maybe, I kind of had this idea of like, many people go back and forth, should I get a full-time job or not? And something I've realized is like, I can't. My body won't be able to handle it. My responsibilities to my son won't be able to be met if I did that, given just parenting schedules and school schedules and all of that. And so there's really no choice but for me to show up here and to succeed in figuring out how to adequately resource myself, how to price my services. Shout out to Vibecaster, who coached me on that last year with spreadsheets. And I still struggle with seeing those numbers that even I can't afford some of my services. Um, but I know that these are the numbers, again, evidence based, that are required in order for me to survive. And so I say that next to this to say, like, I'm a disabled parent in some ways. Um, and I still kind of like feel uncomfortable to say that. Um, Birth of the Divine was sharing on her Instagram stories yesterday about the challenge for doulas to admit our humanity sometimes, especially as people who share online. It's so kind of vulnerable to say that, to publicly identify as disabled or neurodivergent, um, disabled and neurodivergent. It's scary to identify as that because I fear the trust that that could break with my clients. And at the same time, this is the work of decolonizing. We are decolonizing from the expectation that our providers are not human or better than us or on a hierarchy and supposed to be well and all the time. And the truth is that we're human. Even like I say, these doctors and nurses, like will say, WTF, like shred these people for these policies that put forward. And what maybe influences that sometimes, maybe these medical providers who feel that way, one, they grew up in biased and racist environments and they carry that and maybe don't have opportunities to untangle it in the ways we need them to. Two, there are people who also need their jobs, who are at the will of the legal department of a hospital who's telling them what they need to do, and they are following orders because they have their own survival needs. And so, seeing the humanity in all of this, attempting to at least, um, yeah, let's see. This is really sweet. So, um, this is all. I'm gonna go to this tomorrow. I didn't register yet. I don't actually. It's probably because I already checked my calendar and I have something. But if that changes, this just seems really supportive. So check it out. Thank you, Maddie, for sharing this. Thank you for being present with me here today. And this is crowning this week. I am so grateful to show up again after a few weeks off. I'm so grateful for the growth in myself to be less apologetic about taking weeks off. Like nobody's waiting for me or like mad at me for not showing up, but I still, again, my internalized shit. I'm so hard on myself for not showing up. But today's conversation has really reminded me of why this is important because it is all connected. Birth work is a microcosm to me of the larger systems that we are subjected to survive within. And Vibecasters here. Yeah, I just mentioned you if you just popped in. When I say birthing is a portal to our power, I really mean that when we look every time at these situations, this evidence, these ways that systems are wanting to come for us or um, take away our ability to be present and with our power, um, this is the playground that I was called to. It's the birthing world and realm, and it can relate to so many things. You already know it's symbolic. It's also literal. So, how to stay connected if you are somebody who is looking for um, support in your journey toward becoming a parent, whether it's figuring out if you even want to be one, whether it's early stages of what you need to work through to prepare your body for birth, or if you're actively pregnant and looking for somebody to hold you through working through those fears in an evidence based way that is evidence based, knowing the stats of a doula, evidence based, having studied hypnosis and the way that our brains work through fear. Um, Next week, we're going to get into some evidence for Reiki and energy work, which is something that came into my field in my second or third year as a doula when someone approached me and asked if they could train me in exchange for doula services and what that opened up in my world and the evidence for how that is supportive in birth. We're going to get into all of that next week on crowning. And until then, drop your questions on the Spirit Doula hotline, and I will see you next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Take care.